The Ellison Cave Tragedy. In February 2011, 10 students from the University of Florida set out on an adventure to Ellison's Cave in Georgia. Ellison's Cave is famous among cavers. It has some of the deepest vertical drops in the country, including the 125-foot warm-up pit and the 586-foot Fantastic Pit. These pits are so deep that once you start descending, there is no turning back. The students had some basic knowledge about caving, but they were not experts. They made a critical mistake. They brought only one harness and one set of climbing gear for the entire group. Some of them did not have helmets, and many of them had weak or unreliable lights. Despite these risks, they decided to go ahead with their plan to descend into the warm-up pit. The moment. Everything went wrong. As they were preparing to descend, one of them accidentally dropped a bag into the pit. The bag contained important equipment. Grant Lockenbach volunteered to rappel down and retrieve it. Using the group's only harness, he started his descent. But something went wrong. Grant got tangled in his ropes, and to make things worse, he was stuck right under a freezing waterfall that was pouring into the pit. The water was ice cold, and he was unable to move. Seeing his friend trapped, Michael Peary decided to go down and help. But as he descended, he too got caught in the ropes and stuck in the waterfall. Now both Grant and Michael were trapped in the freezing water, struggling to stay alive. The other students realized the situation was getting worse. They tried to pull the ropes, but it was no use. The waterfall made it almost impossible for Grant and Michael to move. Being stuck in that water for too long caused their body temperatures to drop dangerously low. Within minutes, they were suffering from hypothermia. Their bodies became too weak to fight back. The group had no choice but to call for help. They climbed out of the cave and alerted rescue teams. Experienced cavers and rescue teams arrived hours later. They worked as fast as they could to reach the two students. But when they finally got to them, it was too late. Grant and Michael had lost their battle against the cold. Carefully, the rescuers pulled their bodies out of the cave. The other students who had watched the tragedy unfold were in shock. The Guna Caves Rescue. In September 2006, a group of friends from Manjumal, Kerala, traveled to Kodaikanal for a short vacation. Among them was 19-year-old Subhash Chandran, unaware that this trip would become a life-threatening ordeal. While exploring the famous Guna Caves, also known as Devil's Kitchen, the group unknowingly entered a restricted area. The caves were known for their deep, hidden crevices, and multiple people had fallen in over the years. The friends, unable to read the warning signs written in Tamil, continued ahead. As they moved through the rocky terrain, Subhash took a wrong step. In an instant, the ground beneath him disappeared, and he plunged nearly 100 feet into a dark, narrow fissure. His friends rushed to the edge, calling his name, but there was no response. All they could see was darkness. Panic set in. They ran for help, eventually reaching the local authorities. But the rescue teams hesitated. The caves were too dangerous. The risks were too high. No one wanted to go down. With time running out, one of Subhash's closest friends, Siju David, known as Kutan, made a decision. He grabbed a rope, tied it around his waist, and prepared to descend into the depths alone. As he lowered himself into the cave, the darkness swallowed him. The walls were tight, the air was thin, and the rocks were sharp. One slip, and he could get trapped too. But after what felt like an eternity, his flashlight caught something. Subhash, barely conscious, lying motionless at the bottom. Siju reached him, but there was a new problem. Subhash was too weak to climb. There was no solid footing, no ladder, no second rope. Siju had to carry him up. Above them, the friends and firemen pulled the rope with all their strength. Inch by inch, the two were lifted toward the surface. The weight was unbearable. The rope strained. But after an exhausting struggle, Siju finally emerged, dragging Subhash to safety. Subhash survived but spent 6 months recovering, including 60 days in an Ayurvedic hospital. The friends were fined 2,500 rupees for entering the restricted area, but the rescue was successful. 2 years later, in 2008, Siju David was awarded a National Bravery Award by the President of India for his courageous act. Today, the Guna Caves are fenced off to prevent further accidents. The Wildcat Cave Incident. On October 3, 1965, a group from the Methodist Children's Home in Berea was on a field trip to Schönbrunn Village, a historic site. But then, their bus got a flat tire. Because of this, they had to change plans. Instead of going to the village, they went to Whip's Ledges. This park was known for its tall, rocky cliffs, narrow caves, and steep ledges. One of these caves was called Wildcat Cave. Among the group was 15-year-old Morris Batesold. He was curious and loved adventure. When he saw the cave, he wanted to explore. The entrance to Wildcat Cave was 15 feet wide and 4 feet high. Inside, it stretched about 80 feet into the darkness. At the end, it opened into a bigger room. The idea of exploring it was exciting. Morris and 2 of his friends crawled inside, eager to see what was there. As they moved through the cave, Morris saw a small, narrow tunnel that led off the main path. He thought it might lead to another part of the cave. Without thinking much, he crawled inside. But as he moved forward, the space became tighter and tighter. The rocks pressed against his body. His flashlight flickered in the darkness. Then, he slipped. His leg slid downward, and before he knew it, he was trapped headfirst in a crack in the rock. The space was only 9 inches wide, barely enough for a person to fit. Morris tried to push himself back, but the rocks held him tightly in place. He couldn't move his arms or legs. He yelled for help. His friends ran to his side and tried to pull him out by his feet. But he wouldn't budge. They had no choice. They ran to find help. Firefighters and rescuers arrived quickly. They set up lights and sent oxygen into the cave so Morris could breathe. The first idea was simple: tie a rope to his legs and pull him out. But no matter how hard they pulled, Morris didn't move. The rock was holding him too tightly. Hours passed. Morris was still stuck headfirst. Blood was rushing to his head. He was cold and weak. Rescuers had to think fast. A nurse, Evelyn Pinky Pettit, crawled into the cave to talk to Morris. "Stay with me, Morris. We're going to get you out." She stayed by his side for 3 hours trying to keep him calm. But she couldn't reach him either. The rescue team needed someone small and brave enough to go in. That's when 15-year-old Michael Victor Ulrich stepped forward. Michael Ulrich, the boy who risked his life. Michael Ulrich was an Eagle Scout from North Royalton, Ohio. When he heard about Morris, he volunteered to help. The rescuers gave him ropes and instructions. Then, they lowered him into the tight space where Morris was trapped. The cave was so narrow and dangerous that Michael had to lower himself onto his side and crawl downward. He inched forward until he reached Morris's feet. Michael tied a rope around Morris's leg and signaled for the rescuers to pull. Nothing. Morris didn't budge, so Michael went back in and tied another rope and passed a looped rope over Morris's arm. This time, the rescuers pulled on both ropes, one tied around his legs, the other around his chest. He also found a small rock ledge above them. He secured a pulley system using a strap and a clamp to help the rescuers pull. After more than 24 hours, Morris finally moved. Using greased boards and a lot of strength, the team pulled him out inch by inch. Morris was rushed to the hospital. He was weak, cold, and scared, but alive. Michael Victor Ulrich was hailed as a hero. His courage and quick thinking saved Morris's life.